Good afternoon, everybody. While these weekly briefings are intended to update the SU community on topics related to COVID-19, I'll sometimes discuss other important matters with our campus community. Today, I'd like to first address the racial incidents that continue to divide our nation. It has barely been 3 months since George Floyd died at the hands of Minneapolis police. And last week, Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back, in the presence of his children, by Kenosha police. As you know, protests and additional killings have followed. Enough is enough. We need to ensure that all people, especially police, are held fully accountable for their actions. If they are not, then it's up to us to ensure that our elected officials are held accountable for their failures. Although we in Salisbury have very little influence over events in Milwaukee or Kenosha or Rock, it is nevertheless our responsibility to make sure our own houses are in order. And that's why I'm announcing some expanded efforts coming immediately at Salisbury University. Number 1, I'm directing the Office of Diversity and Inclusion to work with admissions, academic affairs, and human resources on a more comprehensive recruiting and retention strategy for diverse faculty, students, and staff. Number 2, at the end of this year and every year moving forward, my executive staff and senior leadership of the university will be evaluated on their progress and attention to diversity and inclusion efforts and initiatives. And number 3, we're working on a review and revision of our general education curriculum and broader portfolio of academic offerings. Our goal is to embed themes of diversity, inclusion, and social justice across all disciplines, and importantly, we will also continue to identify and implement strategies to build more culturally responsive learning environments and teaching methods. And finally, we'll be working with faculty, staff, and student leaders on a comprehensive review of all major university policies and procedures to evaluate them for inequities and for potential improvements. As we open our campus for fall semester, I've been talking a lot about planning that's going on around COVID-19, but I want you to know that we have not slowed down the important work of creating a more diverse and inclusive environment for members of our campus community. COVID-19 has been around for months now, and we're all working together to try to deal with it. But there's another cruel pandemic that's gone unaddressed in this country for too long. This work will not be done overnight, but I am counting on all of you to help us as we deal with the scourge of systemic racism and injustice in America. We will defeat these pandemics, and we'll do it together. Okay, so let's talk more about COVID-19. I've discussed pods in the past, but I really want to encourage students to pick a very few friends and stick together while you study, eat, and socialize. Otherwise, keep your distance. That way, you're limiting your risk of spreading and exposure. Follow the instructions of public health officials, and please do not come to campus if you're feeling sick. Contact your primary care physician and then reach out to campus health. We've received a number of questions regarding which tests are being counted in our dashboard. Our numbers only reflect the tests that have been taken on our campus, and there are a number of reasons for that. Number 1, we received thousands of test results at the start of the semester, but some of those employees and students have never set foot on our campus. It would not be accurate to use those results as a metric to monitor the spread of COVID-19 on our campus, because those tests were taken in counties all over Maryland and in many surrounding states. Number 2, what those tests did was give us a baseline, a good start, and they delayed the arrival of a few people who tested positive until they're healthy again. And number 3, we're confident that as the semester goes on, The vast majority of our students and employees will choose to get tested at SU. Therefore, their numbers will be reflected on the dashboard, and this will provide a more meaningful picture of what's happening on our campus. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dane Faust, our Vice President for Student Affairs, to talk about some of our procedures in the event that we're notified of a positive case or potential exposure. Dane, what happens when you get sick?
Thank you, Dr. White. I appreciate the opportunity to address those questions, and also appreciate your message in regard to our inclusion and diversity efforts. They're incredibly important to Salisbury and to our student body. So the question is, what happens if you test positive? We're going to ask you to go home, if at all possible, whether you live on campus or whether you live off campus. We think that in many ways, being at home can probably be the best place for you, and we would ask you to stay there and to isolate until you're cleared to come back on campus. If you do live on campus and you can't go home, then we have set up isolation areas here on campus. Particularly in Dogwood Village, where we can house people and we can have your meals delivered to you. So if you're on the meal plan, we'll deliver your meals to Dogwood for you. If you live off campus and you can't go home and you also have a meal plan, you can arrange to have a food buddy pick up your meals. What you want to do is connect up with the dining hall office online, and there's a form you can fill out, and you can request a person to collect your meals and deliver them to you. So we ask that you do that. It's really, really important. We also ask that you do not go to class until you're cleared to come to class. We want to make sure that you're not spreading any COVID here on campus, whether it's in the academic commons or in the classrooms or the Guerreri Student Union. So again, we ask that you go home. We also ask that you notify Campus Health and it's Campus Health Online if you've tested positive, to make them aware that you've received a positive test. They will be able to direct you and give you information on what the next steps will be. They will also notify SU Cares, which is part of Student Affairs. SU Cares will notify your faculty that you won't be in class, so they'll be aware of that. Additionally, access to campus buildings will be restricted until you're able to be cleared to come back to campus. We're excited to have you come back to campus, but we want to make sure that you're safe, not only for you, but also for your classmates and your friends. I also want to remind you that Monday is Labor Day. So we want you to be really safe and really cautious. And remember, the classes are in session on Monday, so we expect to see you in class on Monday. But because it's Labor Day, we expect you to use all the precautions you would normally use: masking, social distance, hand washing, sanitizers, and just behave in a way that represents Salisbury University and your peers in the most positive way. I would also encourage you to be aware of your environment as well. So if you do go into the community, be aware of those that are around you. I know that I myself have visited a number of establishments where students tend to hang out in the evenings. And to be honest, I found some of those establishments have been really, really positive and have done a really good job. Rody Joe's, for example, has done a really good job in preparing for students and understanding the importance of COVID. Some of the other establishments maybe have been a little less attentive to it. So be aware of your surroundings. And if you enter a place and you find that they're not social distancing or that they're not wearing masks, or they're doing things that make you feel uncomfortable, I really encourage you to leave. We want you to be safe, and we want you to show your Seagull pride. We're so excited to have you here at SU.
Thank you, Dane. We are also delighted to have Joan Williams, our Chief Diversity Officer, with us. Joan, tell us about some of the changes in diversity and inclusion, how we're handling diversity in a virtual world, and about a planning process.
Well, thank you, Dr. White. It's so exciting to be with you all today and to have the opportunity to address the campus around diversity and inclusion. During the COVID-19 planning process, we had an inclusive excellence planning team. And our goal was really to think about possible barriers for inclusion and to propose questions and solutions related to overcoming those barriers. And so that team included student representation. And so part of what our solutions included was to come up with a COVID-19 inclusion statement. And that inclusion statement was part of the COVID-19 awareness training that people are taking across campus. And that really is about supporting and reaffirming our commitment to diversity and inclusion, making sure that our campus is welcoming and equitable and accessible for everyone on our campus, even during a pandemic. You know, as we think about working in a virtual space right now, we have been very vigilant in making sure that we keep the momentum up. Even in a virtual space, we are keeping the momentum up in what we're doing as it relates to diversity and inclusion. Over the summer, we had an opportunity to interact with almost 200 stakeholders in training. So, although we've been doing things in a virtual space, we've been very busy. As I said, we've been able to touch almost 200 stakeholders and doing various trainings around the campus and community, which included being part of the Faculty Senate retreat, where we had an opportunity to spend 4 hours with them around diversity and inclusion training during their retreat this summer. As we look ahead to the fall, we know that we are just a microcosm of the larger society. And so, what we're looking to do this fall is roll out a web based training for our campus. All of our new students will be engaged in taking this web based training, as well as our employees, as well as our supervisors will be taking an expanded course of courses around bias and disabilities. So, in addition to that, we're also planning to roll out our diversity dialogue program, which is really about people who will come together across differences to really talk in a civil way, trying to seek common ground and understanding. We know that these are some very uncharted times that we're in right now, and we want to promote civil discourse, respectful discourse on our campus. You know, as we talk about expanding cultural competency, how do we expand our capacity for that? You know, part of learning about others who are different than yourself really includes leaning in and engaging. And so, Multicultural Student Services has a host of different events designed just to do that this fall. Starting on September 15th, they have several partnerships developed. So, September 15th, at 6 o'clock virtually, they will have an opportunity to honor and talk more about Hispanic Heritage Month with Dr. Katrina Wolf. And then on October the 8th, they're going to be doing a keynote with Mr. Mark D'Angelo as we talk about Coming Out Month and how to support our LGBTQ plus community. And on October 12th at 6 o'clock, they will be partnering with Disability Resource Center to really honor Disability Awareness Month. And so that will include Salisbury's own Mr. Will Freed as the keynote. All of these will take place virtually, and they will all be at 6 o'clock p.m. You can go to the Multicultural Student Services website and their social media for more information. But it's just really important for us to really lean in together as seagulls to really make sure that we keep our campus inclusive and equitable and accessible for everyone. And we have to know that we have to be intentional in doing this. Thank you, Dr. White, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Joan. And thank you, Dane, for being with us today. We always take your questions at these briefings, and we're delighted to answer a few questions at this time. We know you've been sending them in. So, Eli, do we have a first question?
Dr. White, can you talk about why some modalities of instruction are changing at the start of the semester?
Sure. There are some cases where students had expected a hybrid modality, but for some reason or another got an online modality instead. You remember what we tried to do this past summer when registration for classes started, is we tried to give all of our faculty options for how they wanted to teach, either face-to-face or hybrid or fully online or remote. And we also gave students choices about how they want to take classes in those 4 modalities. And unfortunately, sometimes those things don't come together. Circumstances change, and we had to make some changes in modality of classes. So there are a few instances where students are getting a type of class they didn't quite expect. But the first week of classes is all during the add-drop period. It's not too late to switch classes to try to get a class that better suits your learning style or your teaching style. And we're hoping that everybody this week will be able to make the adjustment that they need to make.
Dane, the next question is actually for you. Could you talk about what happens if students are found to not be adhering to the Student Code of Conduct or public safety guidelines?
Okay. A lot of it depends on the circumstances behind the situation. If a student is found not wearing a mask when they should be wearing a mask, we will remind that student the first time. If we find that it has become more of a consistent theme, we will do what we term as progressive discipline, where it will go beyond just asking them to more of a conduct-based kind of circumstance. In regard to an egregious violation, if a student sponsored a larger party or something like that, we would be issuing an interim suspension pending a hearing. And we've already done that at this point. We've asked 21 students to go home. As we're meeting with them to go through the situation where they may have been sponsoring a party or involved in a party. Again, our goal is not to do that. We don't like to be punitive, but public health and public safety take precedence over everything right now.
Dr. White, could you talk about how we're doing with acquiring PPE and the partners that have helped us in that process?
Sure. So the supply chains for most PPE are in pretty good shape at this point, but there are some things that are more difficult to get. And for example, we had a need this past week to get some N95 masks and gowns for the people who are doing our COVID-19 tests to make sure that they're safe. And so we reached out to our partners at Peninsula Regional Health Systems, which is now Tidal Health, and they helped us and sent us a batch of N95 masks. We're very grateful to them, and we've also reached out to other partners and other suppliers. So we found that people are helping each other through difficult spots. As we need things, we're able to provide things. So it's all working well. Okay, I don't think we got any more questions, but thank you for watching. Thank you for participating. Remember, if you have questions, send them in to our email address. It's been really wonderful to see the students and more faculty and staff back on our campus this week. We know the restrictions caused by the pandemic are difficult, but remember, we're all in this together. I wish everybody a great second week of classes. Thanks, everyone.